So here's the crucial formula, and we're going to write it down, and then we're going to tell it what each part means, and you're going to write that into your notes. So you're going to like draw arrows to the important parts. If you want to leave space around it to do that, great. Otherwise, you can just draw arrows up from down below. All right, here are the important parts. You may recall that I encouraged you whenever you're doing a problem that starts with like an investment or a real world situation involving time, that's the one I kept saying over and over again, use zero. And because it makes your calculations work better. So the, this situation with loans and investments, you are always going to use zero. Always use the use of zero. Otherwise, you're going to get a misleading number. And this one is your principal. And as far as terminology goes, that's the name for the amount of money that you put in at the beginning. Or if it's a loan, it's how much money you borrow. This is all the same stuff as you're used to. And then remember how I was setting you up by saying, let's start writing these as 1 plus this, because I knew this formula was coming. Next, this 0.07 is the interest rate. And this is how often it's compounded. Like, you're going to get 7% annually, but you can get that in little chunks throughout the year, or you can get it all at once. In the real world, you usually get compounded 365 days a year, as in that number would be 365 instead of 12. So here's some options I'm going to write out for you. I'll pause while I write them out. Okay, so there's a bunch of different numbers that could go instead of that green 12 there. You could put it in daily. That's what your typical bank does for interest rates, for their interest they're going to pay you. Monthly, quarterly, biannually, or annually. All right, next part is the plus, and that could be a plus or a minus, and that is how you tell a loan from an investment. If it's a plus, then that is an investment. Plus is investment. A minus means it's a loan. Because your balance on a loan, you want to pay it off. So you start out with this $100,000 loan, and then you subtract from it each month because you're paying off, and that's the minus. If you are investing, you're putting in like $500 a month to make your investment grow to be bigger and bigger. And the last thing is the 500, which is either a deposit, if you're talking about putting money in, or it's a payment, if you're talking about paying off something. Okay, question? Yes, there are 365, but in your worksheet, I think they reference the 360, and I don't know why. That's why I put 360. It's a very valid point. I can't find it, and I'm looking at it, but I'm not seeing it. So I agree with you. Obviously, there's 365 days in a year. Technically, there's 365 days in a quarter because of the leap year thing, but I don't know why they do 360. Do you know? Okay, comment or question? Yes. That is a possibility. Yeah, 52 times, it's 52 weeks in a year, but you don't often see like that weekly thing. At least I don't. I've done a lot of these kind of problems, and I don't see the weekly ones. The ones you see the most by far are monthly. They make monthly payments. You've heard of that a bazillion times, right? And a lot of businesses run on quarters, so that's why quarterly is pretty common. And then the annual is probably, once a year is pretty common. People put money in their IRA or whatever once a year. But this one's also realistic because you sometimes use, daily compounding rates to figure out how much money you should be in your checking account. So, all right, let's see if you really understood that by going to the next slide. Here's another one. Okay, hold on, I got somebody asking. Okay, so on this one, 20,000, and can you tell by looking at this problem if it's a loan or an investment? It is a loan because of that minus there. And that tells me that I've got $20,000 borrowed and I'm going to be paying off $700. How often am I paying it off? Quarterly. 4 times a year I make payments. All right. What's this 0.05 here? It's the interest rate I'm paying. Okay. So if I borrow this $20,000, I can figure out how long it's going to take me to pay it off by looking at the chart on the calculator and stuff. We'll do that for the next one. All right, let's take a real world problem. You want to borrow $200,000 to buy a house, and you're going to pay $1,000 a month and have 8% interest. And let's see what happens when we put that into the calculator. Okay, give that a shot. So if you look at the formula I've got put in for this, I've got n min is 0. Remember how I said to always start with u sub 0? That's why there's a 0 at the top. And then it's u sub n minus 1 like normal, times 1 plus, that's all like what you're kind of used to. And then there's an extra parentheses around the 0.08 divided by 12. And then there's two end parentheses, and then minus 1,000. If you forget those two end parentheses, it won't like it. If you have like a not closed parentheses, it'll say error, and it'll tell you to go to, and you can find it that way. All right. So if you do this right, now you want to look at your table settings. Make sure you're not like at 1999 in your table settings or something like that. So table starting at 1, and then go to the table, and there it is. Now something's wrong with this picture. When I started my first month, my initial month's u sub 0 is 200,000. But then after I've made this payment of $700, or sorry, of $1,000, I still end up owing more than I did before. Yes, the interest rate. At 8% interest, there's so much interest that you're paying that $1,000 isn't even paying off your interest. So we need, unless we want to never pay off this loan, which by the way, some people got stuck in those kinds of loans where they didn't have to pay off their loan. They could just pay whatever it was called pick a payment. You could pay anything you want to, and they would, and then their loan would just keep going up and up and up. There's some people that they talked about that borrowed for college loans. They started out with $250,000 in college loans, which sounds crazy enough, but then they didn't make payments on it and stuff, and there were penalties, and all of a sudden this doctor owed $500,000. Would have owed $250,000, but had skipped payments and done some things wrong, so that her loan amount went up huge. All right, so we need to change this. We need to increase this to, everybody go down and change your formula to 2,000 payments. And then it'll work. And it'll start going down each month, and that's what we want. And I can tell you that's real life, because if you borrow $200,000, your payment has got to be over $1,000, or you're not going to be making any progress at all. You're paying only as much as the interest is. All right. So we could go down and see if this thing is paid off. The way you'd want to do it is say quit out and either go to table settings and adjust your table settings, or you could just try this. Oops, that's not a U. U sub 120, that would be after 120 months. Remember, this is months. I missed a number in there. And the parentheses, and I hit enter. And you can just keep going until you find the spot where it's all paid off. It isn't paid off yet. Okay, that's after 12, or if every line is a month, right? So the 120 would be 12, or sorry, that'd be 10 years. You're right. All right. So eventually, I think we figured this out in another class, that it comes out to about 165. So I'll go second U of 165 payments, which is 165 months. And that means I'm down to only owing about $700, and the next time I make a payment, it'll be all paid off. All right, so you just keep playing around with it till you find it. Now, let's move on to our next thing we got to understand. Worksheet problem number 1, the first problem on the homework starts this way, and it asks you, is it a loan, or is it an investment, or etc. All right. Do you see how this is written different than what I just wrote a second ago? What are you noticing, Duncan? Yeah, this chunk used to be up in front right there, but I moved it to after. They can do that because it's just commutative multiplication. When you have 3 times 5, isn't that the same as 5 times 3? Yeah, so this is a multiplication, so it doesn't matter what order it's in. So it's okay to do that. All right, so how much is it a loan or is it an investment? It's an investment. I can tell by the plus here. How much a month are you putting in? 50. And how much did you have in the first place when you started? 450. And if you put that on your calculator, oh, how often a year is it being compounded? Yes, if there's nothing there, there's really a 1 there, because divide by 1 is the same thing as just 0.039. You know what I mean? So If I divide 0.039 by 1 or not, it's going to be the same. So think of it as a divide by 1. All right, that's all I got for you.